Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Jeffrey. Francois, how are you today, dear?
A lot better than you. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Okay. Little inside information for the audience. I have COVID-19.
No.
More than likely the Delta variant because I am vaccinated. But thankfully nobody else in the office is sick, right? No.
I just got my
Everybody's
negative test super late last night. And
yeah, mine also came in at like midnight. It was weird.
But the doctor said, and hopefully YouTube doesn't take this video down, but my doctor said that 50% of everyone that got the vaccine, and this is Kaiser, 50% of everyone that got the vaccine is still getting COVID, or at least what maybe is just like what he's seen or something. I don't know if that's like a true statistic. Don't hold me to it. That's just what he told me.
I was talking to my girlfriend yesterday because I told her I had to miss my nephew's birthday party this weekend. And she was like, honestly, nobody knows what's going on with COVID. The world is just a game of whose line is it anyway right now. The rules are made up and the points don't matter. That's really what I've just subscribed to believing. But yes, so heads up to everybody if please excuse my coughing. It's going to happen. I'm just going to say it now. I might not get to the mute in time, so please forgive me. So Francois is probably going to be driving most of the conversation today, which...
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fine. I am so excited. I watched 2 other podcasts that he was recently on in the past 24 hours, and it just like, I started taking notes. I don't usually take notes. You know this. I don't have any notes prepared here, but I started taking notes because he was talking about so much. And I was like, fuck, can we just dive into that like a little bit? So I'm like, very excited.
You've watched 2 interviews in the last 24 hours, or he's done 2 other interviews in the last 24 hours?
No, I've watched 2 other podcasts that he was on. One being Yanni Kosminski. And that one, yeah, that one was awesome. So I'm super excited to have him on.
Kosminski. I thought you meant Yoni Mazur. Okay.
No, Yanni.
Gotcha. I know. I'm sorry. Well, forgive me. Well, let's go ahead and bring him on, you guys. Today we are talking with Matt Remuzzi from CapForce. Matt, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Fortunately, sitting here COVID-free. So far, so good. You guys advised me I don't need to wear a mask for this episode. No, so also thankful for that. But yeah, I hope you feel better, Lisa. And I hope all of us can avoid the worst of this stuff. It's kind of messy here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And unfortunately, my parents are sick too, and my best friend and her boyfriend are sick. So, it spreads quick, friends. It's no joke. But thankfully, most of us are vaxxed. So hopefully, this is gonna blow by pretty quickly, and I will be back in the office in the 10 day,
whatever it is,
10 days or 2 weeks with a negative test, and everything will be back to normal. But until then, we're doing this from home. Matt, thank you for joining us. Like Francois said, we're really excited. You and I got the chance to chat a little bit a couple of days ago on Monday, I want to say. But why don't you go ahead and just let everybody know about your background and kind of how you found your way into CapForce?
Yeah, so I don't know how far back to go, but I was in the MBA program where I went after I decided that a career in restaurant management was probably not going to be the thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I went and got an MBA. After the MBA, I went to work for a consulting company that worked a lot with startups. And that was sort of right at the end of the dot-com boom. And the company I was working for kind of blew up and went away. But there was still all these business owners out there who needed help putting together a business plan and doing financial projections and help raising money and things. And I thought, well, maybe I can just pick up some of these jobs sort of freelance until I go and get a real job again. So 21 years later here, I've never had a real job again. I never got back to it. Was having too much fun, working for myself, being an entrepreneur. And then over the course of the years, I've always worked with small businesses in different ways. But one of the things I got into was working with business brokering and mergers and acquisition activities. So kind of helping buyers and sellers come together, put deals together. And one of the things that kept popping out in that scenario was a lot of the business owners, their bookkeeping and accounting was just a mess, right? So the first thing you want to do when somebody's thinking about selling their business is figure out, well, okay, how much is it worth? So you look at the financials, and if the financials are incomplete or months behind or done inaccurately or whatever, it's really hard then to value the business. So I ended up doing a lot of cleanup projects saying, okay, well, let's get your financials in order before we can even sort of figure out if, the business is what it's worth and whether or not you want to sell. And that sort of morphed into the beginning of the accounting that really became the focus of CapForge. And, for years, for the first 4 or 5 years, we were just sort of doing whatever businesses came along, right? Dentist office and restaurants and professional services firms and whatever. And then one day we got a call from a guy who said, I sell stuff on Amazon. Can you do accounting for me? I've heard you guys, do good work. So I said, well, I'll give it a shot. I haven't done one of these before, but I'm sure we can figure it out. So it turned out e-commerce accounting was quite a bit different and more complicated than a lot of the other stuff we were doing, but we worked through it. We figured out, a good methodology, how to do it right. And at the end of the project, that client said, hey, I'm super happy with what you guys have done. And by the way, I'm in a Facebook group and some other people are asking, do you mind if I put your name out there? I was like, oh, great. Of course. Go ahead. So 900 e-commerce clients later, it's become our focus and our single biggest industry that we work in. And, it's been great because obviously it's a super fast growing industry. It changes all the time. It's evolving. So it stays interesting for us. It stays challenging. And it's been great for the growth of my business just to be involved in this industry. But, I'd love to claim, hey, I had this great foresight to go into this industry and it was like my strategic brilliance that put us here. Nope, total accident, but I'll take it. I'll take it. It's worked out really well, but it was just dumb luck sort of that we got into the specific industry that we did.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of found their way into it accidentally. I mean,
Right.
even I don't
We
want to
did.
say like even I was about to say like kind of even with
Yeah.
Noviland, like it was before my time, but all of a sudden it was like, oh wait, you're another Amazon seller? Oh, another one? It's like, wait a second, something's happening.
There's something going on here.
Yeah, it's a trend.
There's money to be made there.
Yes.
Well, throughout your time consulting for these different businesses, I guess, what different industries did you work with? I know you were working with pretty much anyone that came on, but were there any key businesses that you worked with? Let's say like in the mergers and acquisition space. Were you just working with anyone that came your way? And were you working with like Silicon Valley VCs versus like New York bankers?
In the early days, it was kind of any industry, and there was a mix. We weren't sort of the big, 20 million plus M&A, private equity stuff. It was more smaller, angel investors, local groups that were putting together, maybe they were building a restaurant group out of a roll up of 5 restaurants, or I did one deal with a winery that got acquired. I did have a couple early online businesses that I worked with just because, that was what came across the desk, but those were content-based businesses, both of them. So it was just sort of a mix, but what you kind of discover is behind the scenes, regardless of what kind of business it is, the buyers go through a lot of the same sort of anxieties, questions, sort of the phases of the deal, and the sellers go through a lot of the same phases of the deal. They start off, real cagey, like, oh, I don't want to share a lot of information. What if this guy's just trying to find out who my sources are, or, how I do business, and he's going to go knock it off and do something else. And then, kind of by the end of the deal, a lot of times, then the buyers sort of have the upper hand mentally because the seller's checked out at that point. Like they're like, I'm just waiting for my check. I'm done with this business. I don't even want to think about it anymore. And the buyers come in and go, well, I can't pay you quite as much as I thought, and I'm not going to buy all your inventory, and I'm going to do this and that. And they're like, whatever. I just want out. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that the psychology of it and the flow of the deals tends to follow the same pattern, whether it's a $500,000 professional services firm getting sold or a $50 million, e-commerce business getting sold. People are people behind the deal. And a lot of that stuff tends to have a very similar sort of flow to it. So I find that interesting. And that fact that I can sort of coach them and advise them, whether I'm talking to the buyer or seller or both, about, hey, be aware of these things, think this through, understand that at a certain point in each cycle or through the cycle, you're going to have different ideas about what's a good decision and a bad decision. And be aware of how that's going to change, and don't let that color your thinking too much, because it's easy to fall into that trap. And you think, well, sure, for a little business, but I'm sure the guy doing the $50 million deal, he's super sophisticated, right? No, not really. I mean, we're all people at the end of the day, right? And it's just numbers on paper. The emotions are the same across the board. So it's been a super interesting experience for me. And I really like working in this space and working with entrepreneurs, and being able to help people out and guide them through some of the challenging things that they're facing.
And so what would you say to those businesses, whether they're, the 500,000 or the 50 million ones, where they do start off cagey, where they don't want to release too much information? Is there like a right, mindset to get into? Is there a certain type of information you should be releasing?
Well, I mean, if you're selling your business, right, but you don't want to tell anybody anything, it's obviously it's going to be super hard for the buyer to really know, like, okay, well, what am I evaluating? How do I know you're not just giving me, totally bogus numbers? So there's certain things that you generally have to release: your financial statements, bank statements, tax returns, right? Things that kind of demonstrate, if I say I'm making $5 million a year in revenue, I need to be able to back that up. You want to keep to yourself, if you've got proprietary methodologies, or your customer list, or your vendor list, where you're buying your goods, where you're selling them to, or things like that, that, is unique to your business, that you want to hold back until you're far enough along in the deal to be pretty sure that it's going to go forward. But at the end of the day, there has to be kind of trust on both sides, right? If you feel like the buyer is sketchy and just trying to mine you for information and has no intention of going through with the deal, then obviously you want to hold back. But if you go too far in that direction, and the buyer is honestly wanting to buy the business, but just needs enough data to make a decision, then you've got to be reasonable about giving them that information, right? Before they drop $5 million on you in a check that they're not going to be able to get back, they have to reach a comfort level that what they're buying is a good investment, that they're going to be able to carry it forward, that is not going to all fall apart, or they're not, being tricked into something, that they're buying something that, it just doesn't have a long life ahead of it. That's the number one question in deals, right? Is, why is the seller selling? Because the first thing that happens is the seller tells you, this is an amazing business. It's got tons of potential. It makes huge profit. There's all this cash flow. There's all this opportunity, but I don't want it anymore. Like, well, wait a minute. You just told me how amazing it is, and now at the same breath you're saying, but you want out. So why, right? You got to have a legitimate why for your out. I've got this other investment opportunity that's even better, or, I'm at retirement age, or, my wife got cancer and I want to spend time focusing on that. Or you got to have a reason that people can hold on to and say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I can believe that that's a legitimate reason you want to sell this amazing business. But if your reason doesn't make any sense, then people are naturally going to be a little bit more skeptical that maybe it's not as great as you just said it was.
Yeah, I think that was an issue also with a lot of coaches and courses a few years back, where they would tout, hey, I can make 9-figure businesses extremely easy to run and manage. But I don't want to do that. I want to sell my course to you for $99.
Right. Yeah,
Which is why I was skeptical even.
I mean, there's definitely a disconnect, right? If it was that easy, why are you, trying to get me to pay you to tell you how to do it? Why aren't you just off doing it, right? Oh, you can
Right.
scale it up, and VAs can run it. You can live, anywhere in the world and work 20 minutes a day. Well, dude, then why are you spending your time making all these videos trying to get me to buy your course, right? Wait a minute, something is off. And honestly, we work with a lot of the Amazon course creators, or people out there who have courses. And so, obviously I can't get into specific names or get into it in any details. Everything's confidential, of course, but I can say that there are definitely some people out there who are walking the walk,
Mm.
and who are running legitimate businesses that are profitable, independent of them wanting to sell a course. But there's also people out there who 99% of their income is from the course. And if they were running their business at all, if you just looked at that, you would say, that, nope, I'm not impressed by that. So the course is slick and makes it sound good, but the reality, if you look at what they're actually operating, no, I wouldn't. I don't believe the hype.
At
So
Yeah.
at some point, though, they should, if they actually don't know how to walk the walk and their own business isn't that successful, then, in theory, the information they're giving out would be flawed. So wouldn't they at some point in time not be able to sell the course anymore because people would be like writing reviews and sharing with their friends that like, no, this method doesn't actually work? I mean, it's kind of a short-term success track, right?
yeah, I mean, some of them sort of, the course runs its course for a year or two, and then it just, it sort of fades under the weight of too many people saying, I didn't get the results that were promised.
Mm.
I mean, something else I see too is, right, people who launched a business in, 2010 and did great, and then sort of stopped selling in 2015 and started their course based on what they did from 2010 to 2015. Well, that's just not how it works anymore, right?
Mhm.
You can't shoot to the top with organic rankings only just by writing a good optimized listing anymore in Amazon, right? You have to pretty much spend money on ads. There and so what worked for them years ago it's not the same landscape today. So even if you legitimately did well a while ago, your course isn't really reflecting what people today are going to be facing in launching. Obviously, there's tons of more sellers, right? There's overseas competition. There's, the ad platform didn't even exist at first, and then it slowly came into being, and now it's sort of a prerequisite for even getting, traction. So it's not necessarily that everybody's sort of just faking their success, but their success may have been predicated on a way of doing business that just isn't you know, today's way.
Yeah, it's just obsolete information. The
Hmm.
practices don't work anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. How does that tie into your business? I imagine as they grow, and as all these new additional costs come into play, let's say ad spend, and we see ad spend increasing almost quarterly
Hmm.
as more competition grows, as they also need to expand into new marketplaces or maybe new international marketplaces. Um, what's the level of cooperation they need to have with you? What are the types of conversations they need to have with you when it comes to the accounting side?
Well, I mean, what we try hard to do is make it really easy to work with us. So when we set up a client to come on board, we request as much third party access, view only access as possible so we can pull all the data in ourselves. And then while we're going through that, then we're building out their financials so they can see their top line sales, they can see the fees they're paying to Amazon or whatever other platforms they're on, they can see their cost of goods sold accurately by month based on the month sales, and they can see their ad spend by channel, whether they're doing off Amazon ad spend or in Amazon ad spend or whatever. And then we can actually get it down to a really good profit by SKU, so they can see how each SKU is performing, which ones to keep, which ones to promote more, which ones maybe to pull off, or look at the pricing or the ad spend, or the cost of goods sold for those units, so they can make good decisions about running the business. But what's always surprising to me is how many people come to us with 7-figure businesses. They're doing millions of dollars in revenue, and they're doing no bookkeeping, or they're doing bookkeeping once a year with the CPA, or they're doing it on some form of Excel that doesn't really give them the data. So you know, this business has always been a data driven business, but now even more so, with more intense competition, with more barriers to being successful. You really have to know your numbers. And if you don't, you're going to probably, even if you start off well, you've got a hot product in a hot category, it's going to fade over time if you're not really carefully paying attention to it. So that's what we try to help clients with, is getting a good set of data on their performance every single month so they can make good decisions and not have it drop off and fade away for reasons they don't really understand.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like an episode of The Office.
What doesn't?
Michael Scott starting his own business, and he asked him to basically run a cost analysis, and he was running it on a fixed cost model versus a variable cost model. Where as they grow and scale, there's a lot more cost, right? HR, more VAs that they have to bring on in the Amazon example. Maybe supply chain experts, where they have to actually manage their supply chains more effectively because it's no longer just one SKU from one factory. Now you're managing 10 factories and 150 SKUs.
Right.
And I know COGS is, and we'll definitely get to it. That's the whole thing that we're going to get to. But when it comes to that sort of people cost, right? As you see companies that are growing and scaling, what are some of those issues that they're also running into, maybe financially, or they should be planning for as they scale up?
Well, I think a lot of people run their business, they try to do it all themselves, because in the early days they did do it all themselves. And you get to a point where you can no longer effectively do everything yourself, right? But a lot of people don't recognize that until it's too late, and they've missed opportunities. They haven't delegated things, they haven't handed off what they should hand off to continue adding value in the way only they can. I have this conversation with clients a lot, right? There's certain things that only you can do in your business, right? Only you as the business owner can decide, what new products to pursue, where you want to invest your dollars in launches or ad spend, or only you are going to probably communicate with vendors to see if you can get better pricing or better terms or things like that. That's where you spend your time to drive growth and profitability in your business. But also doing all your own product images, or doing all your own kind of initial sourcing research, or doing your own accounting, right? Those are things that you can hand off successfully, and that will allow you to free up the time to do the things only you can do. But if you're doing everything, including stuff you could hand off, then you're not spending enough time probably on the pieces that are critical to your business. You're shortcutting your success there. And I get it. I mean, sometimes people just aren't sure how to hand it off, or they like to do the fun part, but that's not necessarily the part that adds the most value. So as you get bigger, you have to start thinking about, where is my time best spent? Because time is a limited resource. You only have so much to invest. So you want to put it into things only you can really do, or you have to be the ultimate decision maker and start handing off the tasks that someone else can do as well, or a lot of times better. I mean, like with us for accounting, right? A lot of people start out doing their own bookkeeping or whatever, but they're not bookkeepers. They haven't spent enough time learning how to do accounting properly. So not only are they spending time doing it, but they're not doing it right. And we had a classic example of a client who, not understanding what was going on, gave numbers to a CPA. It turns out that he got a letter from the IRS saying he owed $75,000 more because he hadn't done his books right. And the CPA didn't know any better and just filed with what he gave him. He asked us to review it. We went through. Not only did he not end up owing $75,000, we got him a $75,000 refund, because he'd reported numbers wrong and missed important data points, and it was just a mess. So not knowing what you don't know ends up costing you a lot. So trying to do stuff yourself that you don't really know how to do, or you're not the best one to do it, can be a significant mistake. So as you grow, think about where your time is spent and what you can offload to be even more successful with the parts that you do focus on, or you need to focus on, because that's the part that only you can do.
And are there any, in your experience and your team's experience, are there certain tasks or, let's say, specializations that business owners in general, but particularly in e-commerce, that they can outsource or they should consider outsourcing? And the reason I ask this is because, as an Amazon business owner, you might think, well, I'm really good at PPC, and I'm really good at product selection, and I'm really good at managing my suppliers, and I'm really good at bookkeeping. So you might think that you're really good at all these things because
Right.
you've watched enough YouTube videos, or you took a course on it, whatever the case may be. But what are those like common specialties that they should consider outsourcing?
Well, I mean, I would say accounting is one for sure. Most people aren't really good at accounting. It's something that takes a lot of time and practice to get good at, a lot of experience. And if you've only ever done it for your own business and you never really had any formal training in it, chances are you're making some mistakes. I mean, some
Mm.
parts of accounting are pretty easy, and people look at that part and assume the rest is probably easy too, right? If you go spend $20 at Staples, and you're like, well, duh, that's office supplies. I can code it to office supplies. I don't need an accountant for that. Great, but there's a lot more that goes on, and just because office supplies is a pretty easy win doesn't mean the rest of it has worked out. I've also seen quite a few people who thought they were good at managing their own ad spend, But then after consulting with people who really know ad spend, found out, they were wasting all kinds of money on non-converting keywords or overspending on keywords that they could have brought that down on, or missing a lot of opportunities by not investing in keywords that they could have been converting on, and just really being able to optimize that. So, you have to weigh the cost. Obviously, there's a cost to having professional management of your ad spend. But is that higher or lower than the cost of you not doing it as well as it could be done? Right. So you kind of have to consider those two factors. If your ad spend is $1,000 a month, yeah, you're probably stuck doing it yourself. Even if you're not the best, it just doesn't make sense to outsource something like that. But if your ad spend is like some of our clients, $100,000 a month, and 50% of that is wasted, but you could get an ad management firm in that would manage the account for $8,000 a month, and they could get you, 50% better results on that $100,000 ad spend. Now you're just being stupid if you're trying to do it yourself and you're underperforming by that amount. I mean, it's not. I tell people, it's not. It's not a judgment about you or your skills or your abilities, right? It's just math. It's just math. If option A gets me, 150% return, and option B gets me a 75% return, I shouldn't have any ego in it, right? I should just pick option A because that's what's best. And, I like to manage my own ads. Well, do you also like to lose money and underperform? If you do, great, keep doing it. But if not, if you're trying to run the best possible business and get the best possible results, then you should pick the option that gets you that. And if that means handing it off to somebody who spends, their entire job is doing one part of the 10 things that you do, right? Who do you think is going to be better at it? The guy that spends 100% of his time focused on that one little niche, or you that's trying to focus on, 10 different things and you're not really a specialist in any of it. So, I mean, that's, as we know, right? Ad spend has become hugely expensive. It's into more and more of our profit every year, every quarter, every month. So not having that as dialed in as possible is probably costing you money. And then now you just have to figure out, can you get it there yourself, or is there a way that you can have someone else get it there for you in a cost-effective way? And then again, there should be no ego in it. It should just be a math question. Is A bigger or B bigger? And then pick the one that it is.
Yeah, it's probably hard because, I mean, what you mentioned, you don't know what you don't know. Like, you don't know that you can outsource the PPC. Maybe you probably do at this point, but you might not know that you should be outsourcing your accounting because you're not doing it right. Are there any other specialties that business owners should be considering? And I'm thinking not just from the Amazon perspective, but just e-commerce as a whole, right? We're talking Walmart is doing a huge push. I just saw Tim Jordan started releasing a lot of Walmart content, for example. Yeah, him and Norm. Walmart, Shopify stores you're managing. Let's say you're on Wayfair, Home Depot, Lowe's, any of these other marketplaces. Are there any other specialties that you're seeing some of these business owners start to offload?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are looking for help with tax. A lot of people are looking for help with sales tax. We get a lot of questions around that. Still, Amazon took over for the most place with their marketplace facilitator in the US, but still a lot of people selling off Amazon have questions around sales tax. Where do I owe? What are my obligations? And then, of course, if you're going outside the US, Canada has GST, the UK and the EU have VAT. Those can be complicated, and you don't want to, again, try and figure it out on your own, because you end up potentially screwing up, incurring a lot of penalties and interest and problems that you could have avoided by hiring somebody who specializes in that stuff. And it's not easy. It's not super intuitive, and it does cost money, and you have to understand the implications. Like, a lot of our clients, sort of on their own with no counsel, as far as I've seen, have decided, well, hey, my product does great in the US, I should expand to the UK because it's English, and I don't have to worry too much about localization and whatever. But not accounting for how much of a bite that VAT takes, not accounting for the extra cost of shipping, not accounting for the fact that yes, English is English, but not really. You know, they have different interests in different products, and they like to present it in different ways, and they use slightly different ways of marketing that. And same with going to Canada or Mexico or whatever. You know, just you don't just take your US listing in English and do Google Translate to Spanish and go, well, that probably works great for Mexico or whatever. You know, they have a different mindset, a different buying mentality, a different sort of points of marketing that are important. So, you know, doing localization, again, that's a specialty that some people think, I think they feel like, well, I don't really need somebody. I know how to write great listings in English. I can just, you know, kind of wing it. But you're going to find out that that doesn't work. You know, first of all, is the product even a fit? But then second of all, even if somebody would buy it overseas, have you marketed it in a way that overseas buyers are going to respond to? Just because US buyers here like it one way doesn't mean that, you know, somebody in Germany or France or whatever is going to respond to a French or German version of your English listing. So that's another area where I think it's beneficial to get some advice and get some help before you just sort of throw $50,000 or $100,000 into trying to open a new market, and at the end of it find out you know essentially lost money and the whole effort was a waste. You could have taken that same 100 grand, put it into more US inventory, launched more US products, and seen, you know, a much better return on your investment. Or if you are going to go overseas, then get help and do it right. So yeah, that's another area where I just see it's easy to feel like you can do it yourself and then it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And there's so many great services that are available to ecom and Amazon sellers, like, you know, YLT translations and margin business. And, you know, we've talked with a lot of these folks who have really hammered in the importance of like getting those translations localized.
Right.
Or those listings localized, my bad. Well, it's kind of both. Yeah. But what I'm curious about, Matt, is of the e-commerce clients that you guys have, I know that you said this is kind of like the largest facet that you guys are working in right now. Did you see a lot of brick and mortar clients who had moved online like during lockdown, who you kind of had to walk through the differences in accounting or like the things that they were going to have to now take into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, probably 80% of our clients are just pure play online e-commerce. They started with the intention of selling online and they didn't have any prior brick and mortar experience. But for sure, there's a good chunk of folks out there who, you know, had a brick and mortar store or brick and mortar experience and were looking to either add an online component, or we have some clients, and some of them have done very well, completely shift to an online model, not just necessarily because of COVID, but also just because, you know, you kind of see that's the way the world is moving, right? If you've got a brick and mortar store, you're limited to the people who are within driving or walking distance to getting to your location and walking in the door and then making a purchase decision. If you're online, you know, the whole world is basically your oyster, at least all of the US. But even beyond that, you know, if somebody really wants your, you know, whatever it is, they can find it and buy it online from almost anywhere in the world. So I think a lot of people recognize that and have, you know, started to make that shift. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different mentality. If you're used to buying stock for your local store, you know, you can just go in the back room and see if you're close to running out of stock and when you need to reorder.
Yeah.
Right, when you're shipping from China directly to Amazon's warehouse with a couple stops along the way, but you never see it, you know, that takes a little bit of getting used to, of understanding. And it's not like the local vendor or distributor can drop off an order. If you start to run low, you can get it in a couple of days. You know, you might have a 90, 120 day lead time that you've now got to take into account. So that was a mindset shift and a cash flow management shift, right? They're like, well, it's going to be great because I don't have to pay this lease anymore in my brick and mortar store. That's true, but you also now have to buy 4 months worth of inventory instead of 2 weeks worth of inventory. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's harder to deal with returns and damaged merchandise, and customer service is a whole different thing. So, you know, some of these folks adapt pretty well, and some of them it's, you know, like everything, right? The grass isn't necessarily greener. There's pros and cons of everything. There's advantages to having a brick and mortar store, and there's advantages to being online. I would say, you know, apples to apples, online has more advantages, but it's certainly not trouble-free or just this easy, again, we're run it from a laptop on the beach. No, it's a little harder than that.
For sure.
Can't make $1 million in 6 weeks, I guess.
No.
Rats.
Yeah. If I knew how to do that, I wouldn't be on the podcast. I'd be out doing it, right?
None of us would be.
I'm sure. Well, when it comes to, because I'm completely ignorant to this, but when it comes to making those big decisions, let's say moving into brick and mortar, or from brick and mortar moving on to e-commerce, or hiring new people to the team, or ordering 4 months of inventory versus what they were ordering for the brick and mortar, do they come and talk to you and your team for those big moves? Do they ask you for any advice? Do they ask, hey, how much money do I even have to be able to make these investments?
Yeah, sorry, I'm blown away by the size of Lindsay's water bottle. I just caught that out of my corner of my eye.
Gotta stay hydrated, my
friend. See, I just have this little one. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I'd say, quite often they do, right? That's what we're here for, is to help them understand how much cash do you have to work with, what's likely to come in, what's likely to go out if you make these investment decisions, whether it's buying inventory or hiring staff or investing in ad spend or whatever. What are the likely outcomes? How likely are you to recoup that and have it be a good investment versus potentially only break even or even lose money? So, I mean, that's what we're here for, and encourage clients to have those conversations with us. And a lot of them do. They're good about it. And, they're, hey, Matt, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? What should I consider? How much cushion should I have saved, or whatever it is? But other times clients come to us either as a new client where it's already happened, or they're an existing client and they just didn't even think to kind of stop and check in. And we'll see some big expense go through, or some, they have a couple of big down months. What's going on? Like, oh, well, I thought I'd try this. I don't think it's going to work out. Like, why didn't you why didn't you ask us before you, well, anyway. So, some do, most do, I would say, but not everybody. And I think they just forget that they have us as a resource. They just are so sort of focused in their channel that they don't realize that they can step out of it and kind of get a third party opinion, an independent opinion. Because I always tell people, here's what I honestly think, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you just because you're a client. And they, oh, I think I'm going to go into, mittens for cats. I think that, are you sure? Have you done your research? Because I don't know if that's a great idea. Like, oh, I can get a great price if I just order 1 million units. I'm like,
oh God,
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it if I was you.
Well, Matt, you and your team want to keep them as a client. That's the thing.
Right. As soon as you buy those mittens, we're probably done, because you're going to be out of money.
It's funny. We laugh at that though, but I have, and I know Kate has also bought grippy dog socks. So there might be a market for cat mittens.
You get an obese cat versus a 120-pound dog that's slipping on the ice. That's different. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's one of the most important parts. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these business owners started off as visionaries and they remain visionaries, and they might need more of that realist / integrator partner that could help them, bring their ideas back down. They're huge risk takers, right? That's why they became these 7, 8, 9-figure sellers, or businesses. I shouldn't even call them sellers; they're just businesses in general. But circling back around to the main topic that we were supposed to probably talk about a long time ago, COGS. I think these past 2 years, it's been extremely difficult for a lot of businesses to manage these, in part because of COVID, but also, in my opinion, they've built their supply chains around this house of cards. And this house of cards being called lean manufacturing, lean supply chain, whatever you want to call it. But it's where, in a perfect world, my inventory is here in exactly 72 days. And these are my perfect payment terms. And it's Amazon accepting all of my inventory. I don't have to worry about a 3PL, and trucking costs aren't going up. Like all these perfect world scenarios, right? How have you seen this evolve, for the past 2 years, essentially?
It's been interesting. And I think, a lot of people that get into online business, it's their first business. And so they just generally don't have that experience to fall back on, like, oh, I run 5 other businesses, so this one's a little different, but I generally know how business works. So they don't have that to fall back on. And then I think, a lot of them do come to it from sort of the course side of things, or they've just, watched the free YouTube videos and what have you. And their focus is on, I've got to pick a perfect product or a great product, and they're doing all their research. They're using Helium 10 and Jungle Scout and whatever to try and figure out, okay, I can buy it at the right price, it's got enough markup, the competition is okay, I can get reviews, it ranks high but not too high that I can't get in. And there's a lot of focus on that, and then they find the supplier for that product and they place the order, and that's as far as they think. They don't stop to think about, what if there's a delay? How much is shipping going to cost? What about tariff? What about inspection? What if Amazon doesn't take it? What about a 3PL? What about damaged and return products and the percentage of products that are going to, if I order 500, am I really going to get 500, or am I going to get 490 or 417 or, whatever it is? The focus is so strong on picking a right product that I think a lot of that other piece, the supply chain, just goes out the window. It's a paragraph, right? Find a manufacturer, negotiate a price, place your order, wait for delivery. And that's it. And a lot of times too, we see people that don't factor in all of the costs beyond the unit cost, right? When we work with clients, we always want to use a landed cost so we can be accurate in what the amount the cost of goods sold is versus their revenue. And they look at, well, I can buy the thing, it's $5 a unit. If I buy 1,000 units, it's $5 a unit. If I buy 4,000, they'll give me, 480 or something. And that's what they use to do their math. I'm like, right. But what about, that's at the factory floor? What about the cost to get it all the way to where you can have a customer take it off your hands, right? What about that cost? Oh, I don't know. That's shipping. They bill me something for shipping. Yeah, I know, but it could be a huge amount. And if you start to run out, and then you have to do air instead of sea for some of your, to not go out of stock of inventory. And have you thought about packaging? Because size and dimension and weight makes a big difference to your Amazon fees. So are you just kind of letting the manufacturer put it in whatever they feel like putting in it? Or have you thought about that? And have you looked at shipping rates, and how many are you going to get in? What's the container cost? And, I think the logistics and the supply chain is a huge piece of this business. And a lot of beginning sellers don't take it into account. And even a lot of advanced sellers, I don't think, give it the attention it deserves. Right. Again, they kind of go back to, it's fun to think of a brand name, and it's cool to design a logo, and it's fun to write listings. But at the end of the day, this is an inventory business, right? You should be spending most of your time focused on getting your inventory at the lowest possible price, shipping it in the most efficient way to the point of sale for your customers, and really keeping a tight lid on that. And I think a lot of folks just sort of, well, it is what it is, right? That this is just the cost that I paid, and this is the Amazon fees that I'm stuck with. And I hope after that, there's something left over for me. But I don't think a lot of people appreciate how much attention and effort they can invest in that process to really optimize it. We have some clients who do their own manufacturing and have gone the next step to kind of really figure out, what's the right number of units to put in a box so I can keep the box at exactly the right size to be under the limit to minimize my Amazon fees for that? And how much does the thing weigh? And what if we take out the paper insert, or what if we use a slightly, lower grade of cardboard for the box to keep the weight down? Those folks are the ones that consistently are bringing home the biggest results. But they're the minority. I think most people just don't have the attention or the interest or even the awareness that those are all dials that they can sort of set in the business to optimize things. They just kind of, like I said, they place the order, they wait for it to show up, and they hope for the best.
Well, and I think even some of them, once they do source their product for, let's say it's like they figure everything being profitable based off of what they want to sell it for, $10, and they source it for $5, and they forget the shipping and the Amazon cost and everything like that. Because all these courses seem to really hammer in, like, negotiate on price, negotiate on your MOQ. Like, they go straight for the throat on that. I feel like half the time they just go back to their supplier and they're like, wait, I need this lower, as opposed to just doing the work on the front end, they go back and they're like, well, no, now your number doesn't work out. So now I need you to fix that. And that's going to hurt that relationship.
Right.
Ultimately.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of times that doesn't work, right? You can ask for a lower price all you want. And then no. Well, now what do you do?
Let me get you a lower price really quick. Well, I mean, we have these conversations every day. And that's on the Noviland side of it for the sourcing. And a lot of times it's very minuscule. It's something like, hey, I need this for 15 cents lower. Well, 15 cents is only, 2.5% of your total unit cost. You're going to be spending and we were talking to Tim Jordan, funny enough, the other day, and he was like, well, what are you worried about 15 cents for when you're going to be spending like $3 on PPC and probably $3.15 the next day? So, so it's it's a tough. It's really tough, and I love that you touched on this specific topic, because it's tough not to break outside of what you're taught, I think, and a lot of it is coming from that YouTube side. Let's say, hey, go to Alibaba, find the product that you want, get it for exactly the price that you need to get it at, no matter by any means necessary. But what they don't focus on is like, well, hey, where does that 15-cent compromise come? Are they making the product thinner? Are they using cheaper material? Is it going to have a higher defect rate? Are you going to have those higher rates of returns because of that defect rate? How's that going to affect your BSR? It's just this endless trickle effect when they just focus on this one aspect of, I need the lowest price, the best quality, the lowest MOQ you could possibly do so I can test the market. Sounds phenomenal. It's like
I'd also like a unicorn, right? So if that's available too.
Yeah, and not to knock them at all, because that's just what they're taught, but it is just having that foresight of, hey, instead of focusing on those 15 cents, let me focus on building this solid relationship. So in a pickle, I can rely on them to have better lead times. So in a pickle, I can renegotiate my payment terms so I can have better cash flow and make Matt's team happy, keep them employed. Right. So, but when it comes to COGS also, and I know you were talking about landed price, I also don't want anyone to misconstrue that and think that just means landed cost, DDP of whatever the factory tells you, because there are those additional costs, right? There's carrying inventory costs, for example. There's distribution costs, maybe throughout different warehouses, or maybe you just can't sell and now you're having just standard warehousing costs, and maybe those go up after 3 months. What are all the factors, and there's a lot of them, but what are some of the key factors a lot of businesses miss when it comes to calculating that COGS?
Well, one of the things I think a lot of them miss is they kind of expect that there's going to be 100% successful sell through. And that just doesn't happen, right? Some people just don't like your stuff and they send it back. Some of the stuff just goes missing from the floor of the warehouse. Some of it was damaged when it came in and is unsellable. And, hopefully that's not a big amount, but it adds up, right? The more units you've got, the more you're selling, the more that is a percentage that you have to kind of factor out as just an expense, a loss that you're taking. And if you expect that when you order 1,000 units, 1,000 units are going to come and then 1,000 units are going to be sold, and that's it, you're really overstating what's likely to happen, right? You order 1,000 units, hopefully you can sell at least, 960 of them. And and then another 30 or 40 are going to come back or something like that. And the ones that come back, most of them won't be resellable. So, if you do your math on a perfect system, like we were saying earlier, right? If in the perfect world, this is how much I'd make, but I guarantee you nobody's in the perfect world. And so you have to account for those variances and losses along the way. And as long as that math still makes sense, great, go ahead. But if you need everything to line up perfectly in order for it to be profitable enough to make sense to do it, then you're going to be disappointed and it's not going to work out.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had the conversations also, for example, with furniture companies that use this for 3PL for oversized goods. And it's a struggle for them because shipping is hard and storage is hard, and general cross-stocking is difficult. I mean, all of it, nothing with oversized items or furniture is easy, including mattresses. But for example, FedEx and UPS actually raised the rates this year, and they had an extra surcharge on top of what they had last year because of COVID, because they said, hey, for every, let's say chair that we can move for you, we can move 2,000 envelopes, which make
Right.
us a lot more money, or whatever the case is. Are those conversations ones that they should bring back to you to start to calculate into their cost? Or I guess how early should they start letting you and your team know about these additional costs that they're going to be seeing? Or is it vice versa? Do you see those costs and can you inform them saying, hey, we're noticing a higher rate of whatever the case is?
Right. I mean, it works both ways, right? Sometimes they'll come to us and say, okay, if my costs went up by 10%, what's that going to mean for my results? And is this a good decision, or what else can I do? And sometimes we'll see, that over time, over the last 3 months, their margin has been slowly, going down because their costs have been up. And, hey, are you noticing this too? Because we're seeing it. Are you aware that your costs are, creeping up and that's hurting your profitability? And have you thought about ways to mitigate that? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, we know, but it's not much we can do, or we've tried everything already. Or sometimes it's, oh yeah, I was so focused on this new product launch, I didn't even realize, things were kind of going downhill. So we try to bring it to their attention, and we encourage them, if they have questions ahead of time or they're trying to do projections, to talk to us so we can help out with that. But yeah, I mean, that's all super critical stuff. And in the product research phase, even, I don't know if you guys, were in on it or not, but there was a big trend a while back about weighted blankets, and a lot of clients came to us and said, "Oh, should we get into weighted blankets? It's
We
so
have a lot in our warehouse sitting
Yeah.
trendy."
there.
Like, so you're saying it's a bulky, heavy item with a low price point. Are you sure you want to get into that?
That
So,
everyone's
right,
flooding.
and there's a
Also,
million people selling them too. So,
Mhm.
I want to think about that one first. So, yeah, we try to, bring that to people's attention and think it through. And again, just because you can buy it for $5 and it looks like you can sell it for 25, make sure the rest of the numbers in there work. Because if the shipping is $10 and the PPC is another $10, now you're losing $5 on every sale. So how many of those do you want to sell?
Mhm.
And people just don't always think that through.
well, the conversations that we tend to have also are very much on that, the costs that are tangible to them, right? That they can immediately see. And that's why I think they focus on, hey, I need this 15 cents cheaper, rather than how can you help us get this packaging down to be smaller? And that way
Right.
we can, fit more into this $17,000 container when I was paying $3,000 for it 2 years ago. On that note, actually, what challenges are you seeing with some of your clients on that are doing more of the international manufacturing and importing, particularly when it comes to logistics?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of shipping is what everybody's talking about, right? That
Mhm.
is the number one topic. Stuff that you could do profitably even 6 months ago now is marginal or maybe unprofitable. And then just the general sort of supply chain chaos, right? Stuff I could reliably get in 8 weeks now might be 12 weeks or 16 weeks or question mark weeks. And it's really hard to, plan for, I know when I'm going to be out of stock, but I don't know when I'm going to be back in stock. And,
Right.
how do I play that? Right. And I was going to do these other things, but now I have to worry about this. And, it's definitely a challenge. That's why I said it's an inventory management business, right? That is the whole game here with what we're doing is we're buying inventory at a lower cost than we're hoping to sell it for. But as business owners and sellers, we have to manage that from end to end and make sure that all those pieces are functioning correctly in a profitable way, and we're managing for delays and cost increases and hiccups and whatever else. And again, I think the people who think that the game is you find a good product, order it and forget it, they're they're going to be the first ones that find out the hard way that that's not going to work, or may have worked for a little while, but it's going to fall off pretty quickly. So it's again, it's a data driven business. You have to be aware of your numbers, you have to stay on top of that. And then the other thing you can do is, if you can come up with your own product, your own private label, your own actual, sort of modified or invented product, and build a strong brand around that and build a moat around it, then you have more pricing power and you have more control over some of that stuff because you're not selling another Me Too product. Which again, I mean, that's not easy either. Coming up with your own product that people want, that there's demand for, that you can sell successfully and price effectively. But the brands that are the most successful, the sellers that are most successful, tend to have their own stable of unique products. And people who are selling sort of knockoffs or Me Too's, or, you know, it's a private label product, but it's the same spatula that 40 other people are selling. You just put your, you know, spatula king on it. Yeah, but it's still a spatula. You know, it's there's nothing special about it. That's where it's going to be much harder to compete over time when you're facing these added costs and supply chain issues, because other people selling have lower costs, lower overhead, and they can beat you on price. And you've got nothing else to compete on but price. You know, how low you're willing to go, how little profit you're willing to take on it. And there's always somebody that'll go lower and beat you down that way. So, you know, if you want to be long-term successful in this business, I think you have to be really good at inventory management, and it really behooves you to start thinking about how to build a successful, defensible brand around the products that you want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. And what creative solutions have you seen some of these more successful sellers take when it comes to supply chain? A lot of the ones that we've seen have been less than successful is staying and doing business as usual, just saying, I just need a cheaper product by any means necessary. I don't care about anything else. Just make it cheaper.
Right.
Because they don't want to raise the cost on the consumer side. You know, they're scared it might scare the consumers, which maybe I don't know. I just know that I'm paying $2 for a Snickers bar now when it was $1.50 about a year ago.
Right.
But what
Yeah.
creative solutions are you seeing some of these more successful take?
Well, what we've seen is sellers who are able to sort of take a successful product, a product that sells well for them, and figure out how to really put their own spin on it and sort of upscale it, create a premium version of it, and design it in a way that it's totally unique to them and it's their product, and be able to sell that. And they can sell that for, you know, the same or higher price than they'd get for their more generic product, and yet control the cost, control the packaging, control the supply, and be a unique seller of that. So their ad spend goes down a bit because they've developed something that people are searching for. There's not the same kind of competition. And their product costs can go down because they have more control over the inputs, the packaging, and what goes into it. And they've created this sort of higher level demand because they've created a premium brand. So I mean, that's something, it doesn't apply to everybody, but it's something we've seen people be successful with, really try to own their brand and their product. And then the other thing is, you know, a lot of people, like I've said, they don't pay attention to the whole supply chain. And so the folks that do, that are really watching every penny along the way and really hunting for the best solutions and trying to optimize each step, they can survive. Whereas the guy that's not paying any attention suddenly finds that they're unprofitable and unable to sell their inventory in a way that makes any sense. And those guys start to drop out of the market. And the people who are paying attention, even though they're maybe not as profitable as they used to be, they're surviving, and now they're taking more market share from the guys that weren't paying attention and have fallen off. So, you know, overall, just being more attentive and more careful with what you're doing and making good database decisions is going to put you above, you know, 80% of the other sellers. And then beyond that, if you can create and defend your own brand, you can even take a step past that and really sort of own your space.
I love how clearly you're able to communicate that you know what it means to like run an e-commerce business. Like, I think that would be my concern as an e-commerce owner, would be, you know, getting a bookkeeper that maybe doesn't actually understand the ecosystem. And it's very clear that you do, and I'm sure your team does as well. So as we are at the end of our conversation, can you let us know maybe where folks can find more information about CapForge, and maybe is there like a type of e-commerce business that would work best as a client of yours, maybe a certain number of sales a year, or, you know, income, things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, the best place to find info on us is just capforge.com, the website. That'll kind of give you an overview of the kind of services we provide, some general ideas on pricing. You know, you can use the contact form or just give us a call, reach out. It's always a free consultation, right? Because to your point, right, there are some folks that we're not necessarily a good fit for. We try to work with, you know, anybody that we can do a great job for. So whether you're just launching your first product, or you're a 7 or even 8-figure seller who just doesn't feel like your bookkeeping and accounting is where you want it to be, we're happy to talk to anybody and everybody that we can help. But as far as people that maybe aren't a good fit, the only people that sometimes just not our target audience are guys that are doing retail arbitrage, just because they tend to be pretty small and they're not really holding inventory other than just what they can buy locally at, they're buying it in 5s and 10s at the most. And so that's really more of a I don't know, a beginner sort of stage, although we've got a couple of retail ARB clients who are doing 8 figures in sales. So
Wow.
not everybody's a little retail ARB person, but a lot of them are sort of just kind of learning the system and learning how to get sales on Amazon. So we generally work with, FBA private label sellers, FBM sellers, people who are brick and mortar converted to online, and anybody that's doing any kind of volume. And that's not just Amazon. We have lots of sellers who are multi-channel or direct to consumer, sort of Shopify only, running Facebook ads to sell products. So I'd say any kind of e-commerce, you're welcome to give us a call. And if we can help you out, we can. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Awesome. And for anybody listening, that is CapForge.com, linked in the description of the video and of the audio experience. Oh gosh, here it comes.
Oh no, right at the end.
COVID does not seem too fun. It's not treating her well.
Y'all, she's a relentless bitch. Okay. Sorry, friends. Thank y'all for being here. I just totally lost my whole flow. Matt, we really appreciate you coming on the show.
No, thanks for having me. I can't even believe that was an hour. I feel like we're just getting rolling.
It was so quick. I know.
What about all the other stuff? But
there's so much that, like I was saying, I was listening to you earlier, and there's just so much to unpack, I feel.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we'll have you on again and we can keep this
happy
conversation
to
rolling.
Happy to come back. And I mean, I think my role really is education as much as anything else, right? I think people will be successful when they know more. It's the not knowing what you don't know part that can really kick you in the pants. So the more you can be educated, understand your options, understand what you should be looking at and trying to figure out, I think it benefits everybody. And then whether you come to us or somebody else to help out with that, great. But not doing it at all, or not understanding that you even should be doing some of it, I think is what really hurts.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Well, thank you, Matt, for being here. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. If you guys liked what you heard or saw today, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to turn on those auto downloads on really whatever platform you're listening to, Spotify, Google, wherever you guys are finding the show. And that way you will never miss a conversation with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Matt Remuzzi. Matt, thank you again so much. This has been a joy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.